Welcome to the show. Welcome to Your Thought Life podcast. I am your host, Michael Anderson. On this podcast, we help people overcome mindset challenges to fast track personal and professional success. If you haven't already, do subscribe and follow the podcast so you don't miss any of the episodes that are released on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And for those of you who have taken the time to leave a rating and a review, thank you so much. And for each of you who come back week after week to consume this content, we most certainly appreciate your support and your participation. Today, we continue our Mindset Insights from Trailblazing Women series, and we have with us one of my favorite people, KJ from Nomad Cyber Concepts. He serves there as CEO, and we are most certainly happy to have Miss KJ on the show today.
Hi, thank you for having me, Michael.
You're very welcome. We've been trying to do a project together for some time now, and it's ironic we, from a tech exec perspective, move in some of the same circles, and she's gone off on the AI track and has become incredibly renowned in that space. And I kind of moved to the side to let some of the other practitioners consume space in the cyber as I really honed my skills in the CTO space. And we just couldn't get our calendars to work. But fortunately today, we have
Finally,
got finally, we have gotten our calendars in alignment. KJ, would you be so kind and just share a little bit about what you do and how you give back to the community?
I'm a gifter. I've been serving the community, each community I live in, regardless of what state I've lived in throughout the decades. I'm a big advocate on serving the community. So I have about over 35 years of just community service alone. I'm a big believer on supporting organizations. Nomad Cyber Concepts highly focuses on supporting organizations specifically around governance, risk, and compliance. Lately, obviously, we've shifted as of last year, and we're now offering services to help organizations build out and strategize on their AI compliance initiatives. So I am super excited that I have the opportunity to my fifth career and, and going into artificial intelligence, but I'm a geek, so I'm loving it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Heretofore, I've been really noticing that your impact in the AI space has become fairly significant. People are now coming to you without outreach of your own to solicit your input. And I just want to give you two thumbs up on camera
Oh,
for the work that you're doing there. And there's not a there's not a sincere appreciation for the level of effort that it takes to become well versed in
mhm.
this specific discipline. And there's a lot of moving pieces there. It's ever changing faster than any other tech stack we've worked on. And yet, here you are to service the community in that capacity. Again, another huge thumbs up to you.
Thank you.
But you and I have had an opportunity to chit chat side by side, to various events, work together on some panels, and and so we've gotten an opportunity to know each other. And I know we have most certainly a vibe. I know that you practice mindset strategies and techniques. When did you first become associated with heightened senses of awareness and mindset?
For me, probably at the age of 12,
Oh,
um,
wow.
I was very fortunate. I grew up with a father who was practicing Buddhism. And I grew up with a mother who was practicing traditional Christianity. And as a child, to be balanced between two vastly different thoughts and principles, I had to decipher what was going to work for me and what my relationship was going to be with God. And so I had to pivot as a child. I had to figure it out. And what I found is that meditation and affirmations, and this is at 12 years old, worked for me. I didn't know what I was doing because I'm a kid, but it seemed to work. And I was a sports fanatic. I was in sports. I was on stage and I performed in theater for many years. So I had to figure out what was going to work for me. So yeah, 12.
That's fantastic. You know why I say that? Hmm. On average, adults don't become self aware until they're in their late 40s, on average. So the fact that you've got this huge head start with respect to awareness of what makes you you, what allows you to tick, what your buttons are, and how you prefer to do life, I think is quite extraordinary. If you were to sort of think back to, I don't know, after college, where you were in this very impressionable state and figuring out where you would go from there, do you feel like mindset, even at that age, was something that you were still doing? And how did it help you through that very tough period?
Interesting enough, the practice of knowing thyself, which is what I basically practice, that I had to continue because I was a high school dropout, Michael. I decided to leave high school because it was too challenging for me, but academically, I was very sound. So I
Mm.
decided to put myself and finance myself to go to college, despite what my parents or family or the community said, you're not doing it the right way. I've always, and I say this to my mentees, I color outside the lines. And in order to color outside the lines, you have to be able to be self aware and confident enough to know that no one else is coloring outside the lines where there's those unicorns. I have two parents that believed in coloring outside the lines to some respect, but I went even further than they did. So I'm a product of that. So I would say even in college, I adopted that mindset of no matter what challenges I was going to face, I had to get through those myself.
Hmm. Wow. I've only known in my life a handful of people who had the level of bravery it's like,
Or
to,
craziness.
hey, I didn't say you did, to take on college, right, at such a early age. And I feel like that is most certainly would require a heightened sense of awareness to know that this track that they have designed, I have respect for it, but it's not for me.
Mhm.
And therefore, I'm going to do something a little bit different. It makes me think about the voices in our heads. And it sounds to me like from an early age, you've been able to distinguish who's talking to you, whether or not you wanted to participate in whatever they were sharing. So most of us are really critical and harsh toward ourselves. Do you have a voice like that? Do you
I
have
do.
tendencies like that?
I
And how do you
do.
manage them?
I'm human, and there's no perfection in any human being I've ever met, maybe robots. But
Yeah.
even in that, there's biases. I would say for me, my negative thought patterns, they creep up like anyone else. But What I've learned is that my negative thinking is a distorted reality from my perceived eyes and ears. That's what the negative talk, that's what the negative voices are about. It's not my reality. It's a distorted reality of something I may see or think is happening or something that someone is saying to me. So I have to get out of that distorted reality. And how do I do that? I have certain principles and practices that I use to get out of that distorted reality.
This whole idea of personal and professional development is really a series of processes. We're in tech, so we would say controls,
Mhm.
perhaps procedural elements that we know to apply at a given time to give us a framework so we move through it as swiftly as possible without there being a huge emotional hit.
Mm.
And as I think through what you shared about this distorted reality, and then the completion of the thought you said was I use processes. I want to go back there for a minute because I just so happen to know because we're friends that you've also had some challenges with respect to health.
Yes.
You have had the full gamut of opportunity to be harsh, to be down on yourself, to be down on life. And every time I see you, you are the most bubbly person in the room. You're moving through, helping as many people as you can help. How do you do that? Talk us through some of those processes that allow you to be that level of resilient.
Let me start with what I call OPB. OPB, B as in boy. And other that stands for other people's behaviors. And so what I do my best is to adopt a principle that allows me to remove the negative thoughts. Overcoming that is a success for me. It's a win for me on a weekly basis. It's a win for me on a monthly basis. If I can continue to practice that, overcoming OPBs every week, every month, then I continue to get better at it and I continue to let go because I can't control other people's behaviors or their thoughts or their ideas about me individually. So as I was going through my process, and I'll share with the audience a little later about that, but as I was going through that process, I created this principle, and it's basically based off of cybersecurity principles identify, detect, respond, and recover. But for me, identifying what that negative emotion is,
Mhm.
detecting and determining the causality of that emotion, so I can get to a treatment plan of that. And my treatment plan is music, affirmations, and meditation. That's what works for me. Finally, I go to my recovery, and my recovery is regaining my own self worth and my own self
Mm.
value. So, if I'm adopting that whole process of identifying, detecting, responding, and recovering, and I've practiced that, even if it's on a weekly, like I said, or a monthly basis, but I'm practicing those my own principles that I can share that when I'm coaching with other individuals. One of the things what bothered me a lot, Michael, was that I had mentors that were not walking the walk and talking the talk.
Amen. Talk about that.
And so if you're going to coach individuals, you have to live that life. You have
Yes.
to be true to yourself. And you also have to be transparent because there are times when you're not your 100%.
Yes.
And I tell my mentees now, I'm having a bad day today, but I want to be transparent with you so that you can help me flow through it so
Yes.
that we can comfortably get through this together. I do the same principles in my personal life as in my business life. People want to work with KJ Haywood because they know that they're going to get honesty, transparency, and I'm going to be real. I can't be anything else, but I'm going to
Mhm.
be very honest and very transparent with them. Yeah.
Oh, there's so many gems, so many nuggets in what you've just talked through. One of the things that we teach is a morning routine, and it sounds to me like you have a well established morning routine, and thus you're able to, using your own quote, flow through most of what life would send your way on a day to day basis. But I do want to go back and touch on letting go
Mm.
because what I have come to understand is that is the chief enemy for people who are struggling with a pattern of thinking, with a limiting thought, or being in a repetitive cycle that they can't break free of.
Mhm.
When you talk about letting go, could you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Letting go of the idea that these false notions about yourself can be self inflicted. If you don't believe, and I really believe in yourself, when you're at your heightened moment, and I tell my mentees this the same thing, you're right. In general, most people don't have my level of strength, and I respect that. They don't practice what I practice. I started this at a young age. But what I can give them is the little nuggets of the small steps, the baby steps, which is when you're in that moment and you have killed it. You have nailed it. You feel good and you are have this heightened sense of, wow, I did that. That's the space you want to try to get to more often, more frequently. And how do
Totally
you
agree.
get there? And that's part of how do you got there is because you didn't listen to your own self-talk saying you don't have it or somebody else saying you don't have it. You let all that go and you said, I can do this. I can accomplish this. I'm not letting anybody get in my head. And everyone does that. Everyone has done that before. It's just that routine, practicing that mindset and adopting is the key. And I know it's not easy. It's not easy for me. It's
Amen to
not
that.
easy.
There's this idea that says a person can see these false notions and accept them as they are, and then that becomes their reality. They hang out in that reality for X number of days, weeks, months, and now it becomes a temperament. They hang out in that temperament for a longer duration, and now it's a part of their identity. I love the fact that you are taking an identity based approach to working with the folks that are asking you, can you help me get to where you are? Can you help me move forward? Can you help me move my career from a point A to point B? Because at the end of the day, how you feel about yourself is incredibly important. And that whole identity situation, when left unchecked, even with all of these really cool concepts, principles, and processes that we make mention of, they don't get to yield the full result until identity is dealt with.
Mhm.
Have you always had or rather, have you always lacked identity based issues, or did you have some early on that you had to grow through?
I think and I know this is going to sound weird, but I'm 50 something. And I recently discovered or rediscovered my value and my intelligence.
I love that.
And I had no idea because I was flowing through life and just doing it and making stuff happen and being that person that everybody went to and leaned on. But to rediscover myself from a level of intelligence and I was like, and I did that lying in bed as I'm recovering from transparently my open heart surgery, trying to figure out what am I going to do next and how am I going to get out of this? And my mentor said, get up out of bed and start writing. I've seen your
Mm.
writing, right? I'm like, what? And what am I going to do with the writing? And I wrote, and I ended up writing a 3-part series on AI. And identically, that same information is now being used throughout the nation. My articles are being used as using for white papers. So I would say that I went through that identity crisis, Michael, but I'm so glad that I self-discovered that I am smart. And I just didn't see it for myself
Yes.
enough to lean into it. And that's recent. That's a recent discovery.
I think to the extent that we're on this track, I think about some principles that I learned early in my managerial career working with Six Sigma and the whole black belt, green belt, and
Yeah, I
all of
remember
that
that.
continuous improvement stuff. But like this, in the same way that you took that threat model or that cybersecurity model and made that usable in your day-to-day life, I did the same thing with the continuous improvement
Hmm.
process. I said to myself, after each year has taken place, I want to be able to look back and see growth and development across all of the areas of my life.
Hmm.
And I had 3 areas that I was really focused on: me as an individual, and then my faith. Actually, faith is number 1, then me. They're kinda like commingled, but I
Okay.
gave them an order, and then my family, and then my career. So I
Mhm.
have 4 buckets that I was really working toward each year, and I had a vision. I had long-term goals, I had short-term goals, I had milestones, and I had things that I was working on literally every month. And so I did that for 2 years, and it just became a part of me. Fast forward 12 years, 12 or 13 years, and now these very same principles are able to now I'm able to share in the same way you do with your mentees, with my clients, for tremendous gain. And I want to give you a salute for the transparency with respect to some of the health conditions, how you press through that, and how ultimately by you taking action, not feeling sorry for yourself, not
Mhm.
being getting down on yourself, not entering into woe is me, not entering
Right,
into I'm not enough,
right.
things will never be the same. You got to probably hurting, probably
Yes.
sore, probably groggy,
Yes.
and put pen to paper. And now look what that has done. You've now created for yourself a national presence that arguably I'm not seeing any other ladies do the way that you're doing. So, 2 huge thumbs up on that.
Thank you.
But I want to dovetail into those moments where maybe you weren't as strong. Maybe you were having a bad day, to your point. What are you doing on those days to get you out of that funk as fast as possible
So,
so you can get on with doing the business of what needs to take place that day?
mm, I had one of those today, Michael.
Really?
I started my day in a funk and my morning in a funk, and I didn't know why. There was no reason to it.
Yeah,
And then I
I know.
went back to my little principles. Now, that's not something that, again, I have to practice what I preach. So I was like, you know what? You have a podcast coming up. This is your 3rd or 4th podcast. You've been blessed with that. You have been blessed to wake up today. You've
Yeah.
been blessed to be able to move and make up your own bed. So
Mm,
stop. with this, whatever it is, let it
Let's cut it
cut
out.
it out. It has no space for what is about to take place in this day, in this
Mm,
blessed day that you've been
mm.
gifted. So I had to do that like through self-talk and some music that I played that made me feel good and shifted my energy. And just this morning, because I was like, no, I'm going to come to the table to my best, the best for the podcast, for your listeners, but also for some meetings and mentorship I have later this evening. I'm going to bring my best because I can do better.
Fantastic. I am big on gratitude because for me, if I'm feeling one of those funky states, sometimes I feel the shift of energy you made mention of when I use gratitude, it just literally flushes out all of the
Mm,
negativity,
yes,
all of those low level vibrations. There's
yes,
not enough space in my head to be in the same, in both states at the same time.
right.
And it's just like once I get out of it, then I can see clearly
Yes.
this was not a good use of my emotional capital for the day.
Hmm.
This is not how I want this day to end. And I began to share with myself today, it's going to be a phenomenal day. Just watch. And from there on, I'm able to do that day from position of love, joy, and peace. And
Yes.
I always want to be in that continuum because I find that for me, that's when all the good stuff happens.
Oh, yes. It does.
So I've got one final question for you, and it is the creme de la creme. Take as much time as you want to articulate this. But but we always want to, as I share in my opening, fast track the lives, careers, the intentions, the aspirations, the dreams of younger people so they don't have to have as hard of a time getting to where they want to be. And obviously the bulk of this is done through mindset, is done through personal and professional development. If you had some younger people that you were talking to, maybe they are just exiting high school, or perhaps they're just leaving college, or maybe they've been in the workplace as a professional for a little while and they're having a hard time moving forward. And we know that the vast majority of the time, better than 90%, it has to do with mindset. What would you tell them from a mindset perspective, KJ, that would help them leapfrog and fast track their success to the next level that they are aiming for?
The first thing, very first thing is you have to take control of your mindset, period. You have to, that's number one, because that drives everything. It drives your motivation. It drives what direction you want to go, good decision making. Take control and don't allow negative thinking to consume you, and do whatever that means, whatever it takes to stay in the flow of positive thinking. That was drilled into me from my father who practiced Buddhism. Jealousy is a compliment. Embrace it. Don't fall victim to having people be uncomfortable around you, or telling you how to speak or how to talk or how to wear your hair or what you should be doing on social media. Jealousy is a compliment, and embrace that. I would say have fun and enjoy life. Don't be so intense. Don't be like us in our generation. Have fun, enjoy life, set boundaries for yourself. And it's okay to self discover. It's okay to not know the answers to everything. So I would say those would be my top recommendations. And that goes for anyone at any age, I'm sure. Oh, one last one. I got one last one, Michael.
Bonus.
Not all good people are a good match for you,
Oh, that's great.
period.
That's great.
There's great people in the world, but it doesn't mean that they necessarily need to be in your life because you are your own unique person.
That's right.
So don't hold on to people that are good just because they're good. Are they a good match for you? Whatever that means, whatever relationship that means.
We most certainly appreciate you sharing out of the abundance of your heart and of your experiences with us today. Audience, you've heard from KJ, CEO of Nomad Cyber Concepts, a fantastic human being and a good friend of mine. KJ, thank you so much for your time on the show.
Mhm.
Do you have any final parting words before we sign off?
The only thing that I would say is get to know you because you're first.
It's good. Meditation does that for you, to know thyself, and you made mention of that during our talk. We do want to thank each of you for the time that you've spent, and unfortunately this does conclude this specific episode. We appreciate your time and your attention. I want to remind you that you are enough, you can do it, and you are uniquely equipped to realize your goals. And until next time, take care and be safe.